Welcome everybody. This is Brian with Where Rebels Are. We stream on Twitch 4 days a week talking about the stock market, and today we're actually going to be talking a little bit about professional development. So I know a lot of folks out there are currently in the process of getting new jobs, maybe increasing your employment or coming out of unemployment from the pandemic shutdown and lockdown. And what a lot of people are worried about right now is their income, their salary. So a lot of companies, small companies have shut down, medium-sized companies, etc. A lot of large companies very drastically cut back their employment base, and people are finally now getting out of the works and back into, or I should say getting out of their house and back into work. And so given my experience as a hiring manager, having gone through the process of owning my own business, negotiating, hiring, talking to people about salaries, etc. And then also I was once upon a time a standard hourly and salaried employee as well, and I had successfully navigated or negotiated my salary. So I feel like this is kind of a quick little pin or timely, if you will, topic, and I hope to have this live on YouTube soon for you guys. If you're watching it on YouTube, hello. Welcome. Come check us out on Twitch. I stream 4 days a week, like I said, all things personal finance. And we also have a Discord link below for that. But without any further ado, I am going to use a guide from the Muse as kind of my baseline or standard to guide this conversation and help you pick up some tips, hopefully, to better position yourself for a raise or your first salary. So rule number one, you got to remember, all things are negotiable. It doesn't matter who you are, what level you're at, or how stick in the mud the counterparty is, the hiring manager or group. There's always room for negotiation. Now, trust me, there's going to be plenty of small businesses out there or medium-sized businesses that are going to be quite honest with you and say, hey, we just simply can't afford it, and that's okay. It's important first. It's important to understand your worth as an employee, but also important to understand kind of what the broader market looks like. So the first step in negotiating salary after you identify, yes, I am worth being paid more, is to understand what people are actually being paid. My favorite resource for that over the last, I don't know, I've been using it for at least 7 years, probably more. Glassdoor. You get employee reviews, you get salary ranges. It's really easy to do research on companies, but also they do a good job at aggregating data and demographic information. So not only are you going to know what your company, if they're large enough and they've got some reviews under their belt, is paying, but you're also going to know what your particular role is valued at in the broader market. So as an example, this is one I've always kind of gone back to as guiding people in transitioning their career. Let's say you use business system analyst, BSA, as your baseline. This is what role you're in, and that's what you're looking to understand. So I'm going to show you Glassdoor real quick. There it is. Ooh, wow. Average base salary for a BSA is $74,353. That's actually up a little bit significantly over the last years. And you can go across all industries. You can sort down by industry because a BSA, as an example, in the medical field is likely to end up paying more than potentially, it depends on what company you work for again, but as a standard, probably going to end up paying more than you would earn in, say, finance, as an example. So understanding what industry you're in as well is another drill down you can do. You can also drill down by the company size. So even if you can't find your exact company, Glassdoor does a good job at kind of helping you understand what companies of a similar size are paying, and then also your years of experience. Okay, if you're just entering into BSA work, you'd probably be much closer to the 47,000 mark, right? So let's actually change that, see if it updates. I wanted to point out, if you drop your years of experience from 0 to 1 years, we moved from a 70,000 plus base pay expectation in the medium range. All right, that's your average. At 50 is now 55,000, almost 56,000. Do not be surprised, okay, if you get offers that are significantly less than this. You can easily get a range of 30% plus or minus whatever the baseline average is for your job or role. So understand that when you're looking at research and information, this is only going to get you close to what that number is. You're going to then want to also interview your company, okay? As a manager, as a hiring manager, I had access to all of our pay scales and ranges and buckets, and what was required to be considered frontline, senior, I think that was it. Junior, we had some junior positions, but not as much. It was really just baseline and senior type work in terms of the breakdown or scale. But companies may have more specialized breakdowns or buckets of how they differentiate who gets paid what. But once you have at least a starting point, you can confidently go in and ask for more than what that mid-range is. How much more depends on your value statement. And that brings me to kind of the next factor. So first step, know you're worth it. Second step, understand what that value actually is out there in the market. And then third step is going to be just understanding or identifying what it is you think is the value proposition. Okay. A relationship with your workplace is very much like any other personal or interpersonal relationship that you're going to have. There's always a giver and a taker, right? In every relationship. And the goal is to get those to be as equal as possible, right? I am pouring myself into the work. I would expect my work then to repay that in kind, in the form of compensation. And when you're talking about compensation, understand, especially here in the United States, that compensation package is more than just your base salary. So while this does say 55,700 or rounded up to 56K as the average is your base average pay, okay, that is reflective of total compensation. So your actual take home would be less than that because they're going to take out retirement and healthcare and any other employee benefits that they might have. They might be paying for your cell phone. They might have a housing allowance that happens for some places that require a lot of travel or relo. That's kind of a compensation as well. Also understand this is for all of you guys who are entry level in the workforce. Okay, you may have a couple of years behind your belt, but you're still considered frontline in terms of your skill sets and your work range. What about compensation on education? Most companies are willing to pay for some, if not all, of your education because they understand that a better educated workforce sticks around longer, but also has the potential to be more productive. So those are other ways that your company can compensate you more than just your base pay. So even if you don't get your hourly rate or your salaried rate to increase, understand that may be a factor of, hey, you have retirement benefits and you have healthcare benefits that you may not be taking full advantage of, or again, other benefits of the kind. So look into your company's full compensation offering, okay, and identify how far away you are from the median, okay? Now this comes to gap analysis, how far away you are on being compensated from the median and whether or not you think that you're better than an average employee, which if you're asking for a raise, I'm sorry to say, you better damn well be better than average. Because again, it's a two-way street, okay? This is a relationship, so treat it as such. With that, I'm going to go ahead and pivot back to the list here on the Muse, and this is going to talk about some of the stuff that I've already covered. Getting prepared. 1, know your value, and again, Glassdoor, great resource for that. Next, talk to recruiters, okay? If you're not comfortable talking at your own company, headhunters are a thing. I used to get at least one request, I'd say minimum every month, from somebody asking to take me away from a company. I've been self-employed now and running my own business for 3-4 years at this point, and I still, about monthly, get reached out to by at least one recruiter or so. Talk to that person. Okay, they don't necessarily have to take you out of your current role. Okay, and I get the discomfort of wanting to stay where you're at and not being eager to jump ship, as it were. But true story, a compensation offer from a recruiter, because I asked, hey, how much is my role actually worth? Here's the licenses I have, here's the number of years of experience I have, and I'm considered a top performer. What's the range that I could expect? They came back to me with a dollar amount, and I said, hey, based on this information, you should probably be looking at a baseline compensation of about 105, 110 plus. At the time, I was only making about 70, 74, somewhere in that range. I can't remember, because I got 2 raises, one after the other. So I went back after getting 2 raises, one after the other, and I said, hey, I just got an offer. They want to take me away for $105,000. Immediately got bumped up to 102. No questions asked. That's all I said. So that could easily be your story as well, is just saying, hey, I like working here, but I have an offer that is going to be pretty difficult for me to completely walk away from. See what they'll do. Okay, that's a strategy that worked out once for me, and hopefully it's as easy for you as that, but not always. I understand it. Number 3 tip here from the Muse says to organize your thoughts. Okay, this is part of the reason why I'm using an outline. Because I do a lot of facilitation. I talk a lot. I do go on tangents and rabbit trails and whatnot. And that's just a natural human condition for most of us. Make sure that you do take the time before moving into a conversation like this to really understand the full picture. Okay? If you go in and you have zero preparation, I did that once in my career. No preparation whatsoever. You're gonna go sit down with your boss and you're gonna say, "Hey, boss, I want a raise." I'll be like, "Okay, why?" Because I deserve it. I've been here for X amount of years, and people really like me. Okay, how much would you like? I don't know, more than I'm making. Well, guess what? I did get a raise. It didn't come until year end, and the merit increase, which is what the company's a term for standard cost of living raises was 2%. My boss gave me an extra 2% on top of that. He's like, "Hey, you got an extra 2%." And while I was a kid and making 4% more in the first year, made me feel good, feel like I did something. Looking back now, I realize how much I'd left on the table, because this is a point when I was killing it in my career. I just had zero concept of what actual raise or compensation should be. I was working a role, making $36,000 a year. New employees were coming in, they were making $42,000 a year, and I thought it was great that I got that 4% raise at the time. But top of range for this role that I was working in, $56,000 a year. That's a whole $20,000 more than what I was making. And as a contributor, as an individual contributor, I actually had the track record to justify being paid that much. So yeah, just take the time to organize your thoughts, because things are going to go far better for you if you put the time in to prepare. Number 4, pick top of range. Okay. Whenever I talk about negotiating with folks, this is a key to negotiations. Go for the max. Okay. Because what's the worst that can happen? They're going to tell you no. Then you come back and you present another offer a little bit less. Okay. And then they might say, okay, now we're willing to start negotiating. But that's the worst that's going to happen. Guess what? You're already not making as much as you think you should. So you didn't put yourself out anything by asking for top of range. Also, understand, if you are going to be the person that asks for top of range, you've got the ability to back it up. Okay. I am contributing XYZ beyond what my role demands. I have XYZ performance metrics that show that I've outpaced my peers. And here's a letter of recommendation from one of my colleagues or a director from another department. Those kind of things really do take you a long way, but it also helps you yourself to have the confidence to actually ask for top of range. Now, you're not often going to get it. I came really close. So I asked for 76 and got 74. So it was close. But that $2,000 was, to me, something I didn't care about. I was just happy to move my compensation up to being more fair range. So anyways, top of range, all right? Make sure to ask that, because the worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to shut down immediately, and then it's on you to just rebroach the conversation again and come back to something a little bit less, and hopefully they'll meet you closer to the middle. Whereas if you start a negotiation in the middle, right? You come in and say, hey, I want to get into a raise of $55,000, and that's the smack dab in the middle. Their counter to you is going to be, well, would $50,000 be okay? And you're going to have to then adjust your negotiation at that point. Okay, maybe you say, okay, can I try to get 52? And they say 51, and then bam, you're done. Whereas if you start at top of range and you say, hey, give me 75, they're going to come back and they're going to say, well, I can't do 75. Let me give you 70. You're still 15 grand ahead of that 55 starting point of the middle. So, well, sorry, 20 grand over the 55. So just understand that that's why you start at the top. Okay, it's not an expectation that you're going to get the top. Some of you are worth it, not all of you. Take some self-awareness, so dig into yourself and ask, are you worth it or not? But even if you're not worth top of range, okay, you know you're not, in your middle of the track, asking for top of range is going to get you a lot closer to middle of the track than asking for middle, because then they only have to move you up a little to make themselves feel good about actually giving you an offer. Okay, that's another thing after going through this list. I don't know if it's on here specifically, but I do want to call it out at this point in time. When you're negotiating, you're dealing with another person. Okay, having been on both sides of the negotiation, I can tell you unequivocally, the person who is being asked for the raise, the boss, wants to give you a raise, especially if you think you're good enough to ask for it. I want to pay my people more because I like the people that don't drain me. And usually the people who are asking for a raise, for the most part, are the ones who are contributing to the team and the goals, and they're supporting in other ways as well. So if you are that support, understand your manager or director, whoever's over you, your boss, likes you probably, and they want to give you something. Okay, even if you don't have the greatest relationship with your boss. Okay, I had some people who just didn't jive with the role. They were good people, they just didn't fit the role that was needed, and just because they weren't good at it didn't mean that I didn't want to help them any less. Okay, so understand that that's a part of humanity, as the desire to fulfill a request. So just as much as you want to be a good employee, your boss wants to be a good boss. So understanding that before you go into the negotiation process should make it a lot easier for you. Number 5, know an exact number. Okay, this circles back a little bit to talking to recruiters. If you can, internal HR is great. It can be very difficult to get the information of pay scales and ranges within your company internally. A lot of companies have very tight restrictions and rules, and you have to sign agreements and stuff about what you do and don't talk about, which, by the way, in some states is illegal, but that's a whole nother topic that we won't get into here. But understand that the information may be pretty veiled internally. Okay, if you're a good employee, usually people are willing to let you peek behind the veil a little bit and understand some. If you're not that confident in your position in the workplace, then just again go to the external recruiters and come back hopefully with a pocket offer saying, hey, Joe down the street's offering me to pay me 30% raise. I'd like to stay here. What can you guys do about it? Again, that's one of the most powerful negotiating situations that I've been in. So try that if you can't get your internal information. But the reason you go for an exact number, okay, because round numbers mentally, a lot of people tend to think, oh, you are, I don't know, just kind of ballparking it. And if they feel like you're ballparking, then they want to ballpark back. Whereas if you come back with a very specific number and you say, hey, I want to be increased to a rate of, I don't know, $17.80 an hour, or I want to be increased to total compensation of In this example, $64,750. That's an indication that you've done your research, and there's a reason behind why you're asking, and that's going to make somebody a little bit more uncomfortable pushing back, and that's why you get specific there. Number 6, be willing to walk away. I did 5+ years of career coaching. Okay, there's always going to be another job. There's always going to be another role. There's always going to be another company. That's always going to exist. Okay, I get the attachments we feel as humans and wanting to stay where we're at because it's safe, because we know it, because it's here, right? The whole bird in the hand is worth two in the bush concept. Well, I already have this job. Why would I want to go mess it up? Well, the reality is you're worth it. You yourself are worth it. If you are in the situation of actively hunting to solicit a raise, then you need it, right? Or want it, because want is justifiable as well, right? Maybe you make enough to pay all of your bills, but now you think, hey, maybe I deserve enough to go on a vacation once a year. Hey, a raise can make that happen for you. So make sure that you are willing to walk away. I get it. Like I'm a cynic. Naturally, I lean to looking at the negative news and lens of things. I have done couples counseling. I've done job counseling. A very consistent theme that comes up for me is, are you happy or not? And if you got more out of this relationship, whether it's with your significant other or your job, would you then consider yourself to be happy? Understand that nothing's gonna fill that proverbial void, right? Money doesn't do that, but it does actually make it easier to pay your bills and give you some peace of mind, and maybe make it so that you don't have to put in 20 hours of overtime every week just to get ends meet. Okay, if that's the kind of position you're in from a compensation standpoint, okay, walking away may be the best decision you ever make, because a lot of times people won't go and ask for more because they don't feel like they're worth more. And if you're in a relationship that makes you feel less than you are, again, whether it's a significant other or your actual job, then it's toxic to you, and you should consider moving on, because you personally are going to get a lot more growth and fulfillment out of going somewhere that actually values you than staying in a job that refuses to compensate you for what you are actually worth, because it sticks with you mentally. As soon as you know, hey, everybody who's doing my job across the city is making $56,000 a year, but they're only paying me $30,000 a year. It sits with you, right? It makes you think, well, maybe I'm only worth this much. Maybe I don't have the talent. But you get out there and you talk to folks and you find out that some of these $56,000 a year folks are working half as much as you are, and doing jobs or work that is half as complex as what you face on a daily basis. Companies pay you less because they're greedy. Okay, that's the reality of it. Everybody wants the keep as much as they can, and to do that, they offer lower starting points. Okay. And that's not a bad thing. That's capitalism. But understand that for you yourself, if you're worth it, then you're worth it. Stop acting like you're not. Next thing is plan the right timing, okay? Don't bring these kind of conversations up at year-end. Year-end conversations that I had maybe got me 1% extra. One year, because I had it at year-end, I did get an extra $5,000 bonus. That was taxed at 40%, so that sucked because it was structured as a bonus, so that didn't really give me what I was hoping. But just understand that year end, probably the worst possible time to start asking for a raise. Do you know why? Because everybody is trying to justify a raise at year end. Ask a couple of months before. I think that a fantastic time to have the conversation, August, September. Okay, if your company does annual year-end stuff, right, start talking about it then. Because if your manager has any of these feedback points of, if Jim, you would like just take up an extra side project, I would be able to, justify a wage increase for you to the rest of the management group, because, Joe on the other team over here is knocking it out of the park. And when we compare the two of you guys together, as far as the leadership group's concerned, Joe deserves the raise more than you do. So this gives you time to adjust as well as address any possible needs on your side in order to justify your boss fighting for that raise for you. Prepare one sheet. This is actually good practice even if you're just doing self-reviews for annual performance at your company. Some companies have a formal process that you have to go to, others not so much. But the people who track their own performance, okay, based on just their own observations, because you are going to pick up on more than your manager will. Period. End of discussion. As a manager, I've got 12, 14, 22 people, whatever size of my team that I'm trying to manage and wrangle all at once. You are one out of that group. And while you may be my rock star and or my favorite, I still am not going to do as good a job singing your praises as you will. Because guess what? You're going to have all of the emails that you got from clients and or colleagues. You're going to be able to track not only the projects that I asked you to do, but the projects that, Sally halfway across the aisle also asks you to do. So this is why it's important for you to track this information. And if you can keep it all on a single page, I would argue if you can keep it to a paragraph of bullet points, all right, 3 or 4 one-liners, even better, because that's really gonna help make the case. Because if you give me that sheet as your manager, then I will put that sheet directly on my director's desk and say, hey, Bill, make this happen. It just saves everybody involved a lot of work. Because guess what? The director can then just put it on HR's desk and say, hey, HR, make this happen. So one sheet. This is a good practice just in general, even if you're not looking for a raise, because it helps you also track your own performance at work. Practice makes perfect. Okay. This varies from person to person. I've done a lot of interview prep coaching, and there's a certain level of preparedness you need to have, but there's also the point where people kind of take it too far and it starts to become stiff and very scripted, and maybe you'll get jumbled because the question wasn't asked exactly as you thought it would. But at the end of the day, still practice the conversation with someone you trust. Preferably someone who's not your friend, but you are comfortable talking to, and also maybe a peer of the person that you're going to approach. So you don't always have that as accessible in smaller companies, but if you work at a really large company, you can go to a completely different department and talk to a manager that has nothing to do with your manager and practice the conversation that way. The longer you're at a place, a workplace, the more connections like that you'll have. If you don't have such a connection, build one, right? Ask for a mentorship of some sort, because it's important that the people, your immediate leader, right? So your frontline manager, your director, your VP, whoever it is you're reporting to, it's important that that is not the only person you interact with at that level for situations and reasons exactly like this. Because you don't want to practice on your boss when you're not even sure that your boss is going to give you the green light on the raise. So find somebody you trust to do that. Set the meeting for Thursday. I thought this was an interesting one, and this is actually the tip that made me decide I was going to use this guide as my standard to kind of go through my own tips. Is set the meeting for Thursday, because Mondays, people don't like taking on projects. They're still trying to wrap their minds and hands around what was going on from Saturday and Sunday that's stacked up in their inbox on Monday. Nobody wants to take an extra project on Monday. Period. End of discussion. I would also argue, don't do it on a Friday. While people do tend to be more compliant on Friday, you'll also have a lot of folks who will say, you know what, let's table that for Monday. Whereas if you do it on Thursday, then they'll maybe table it to Friday, but they're not as likely to push you off until Monday. And they're also on Thursdays usually more or in a better situation or position to take on extra work. And guess what? You asking for a raise, even if it's easy, as a process is still extra work. So Thursdays are going to be very beneficial in helping helping your chances, I should say. Starting the conversation, this talks about power posing. I do the same exact kind of coaching for interviews. You have more confidence when you set yourself up to act like a superhero, okay? Just the physical act of moving that way changes the circulation in your body, changes how much blood is going to your head, and it changes your energy level as a whole. So if you are going into a conversation like this, don't let it be immediately after wrapping up work, okay? Give yourself a buffer of 3, 5, 15 minutes, however long it takes you to reset mentally and do that. I also talk about it for breathing and mental exercises for trading, right? Same concept, okay? When you need to reset from a trade that maybe went wrong during the day, you've got to take a step back, okay? Allow yourself to recenter, focus on your breath, and that becomes easier and easier to do with practice. I would say when I started meditation, I could meditate for an hour and not ever get there. Then after years of practice, now it can come to me. That centeredness, that focus on being in the moment can come in a single breath. So however long it takes you to get centered, to get energized, get ready, give yourself that buffer before going into the meeting so that you can come in ready to negotiate. Because if you come in and you're like, oh, well, I think I need a raise, or I should get a raise, I'm here because of a raise, and then you go off on a tangent about whatever it is that you just got finished working on and talking about the stress, well, I'm going to say, really? You're stressed about that thing that you just dealt with? That doesn't speak confidence to me as maybe you deserve a raise. So confidence takes you a long way in this, and so make sure to give yourself that space there. Next thing, drink some coffee. Be careful. Just be careful with that. Like, it affects everybody differently. For me, actually, it was ginkgo biloba and ginseng. That was my primary go-to to kind of get energized and refocused. Job bans themselves can be considered company-sensitive information. However, your salary versus your peers are protected conversations, and they cannot punish you for this. Union stuff, even if you're not in a union. Yes. That is an important call out for you guys here in this group. Understand that talking about your salary and your compensation is in no way illegal. It is, however, illegal for your place of employment to actively try to prevent you from having conversations about salary and compensation. Okay, that's your right in most of the United States, and believe it or not, there's plenty of jurisdictions within the United States where it's illegal even for your potential employers to ask you how much you're making. There's a lot of protections in there for the individual employee, so just realize that there's a lot in place. If it doesn't feel right, seek out guidance, consider an ombudsperson if needed, but it's really not something that should be retaliated against. And if you are retaliated against, 1, it was a toxic environment, 2, you may have protections available to you, so maybe talk to an employment attorney or something. The next thing is walk in with confidence. This is tip number 14 from the Muse. It says the way that you enter a room can dictate the rest of the interaction. This same thing goes to interviews as well. I actually gave this exact same advice to my salespeople. Right? The way in which the initial interaction goes sets the tone, okay? You want to make sure that no matter who you're negotiating with, whenever you enter a negotiation, 1, they feel respected, and 2, they understand that you're there with purpose. So a quick introduction that I would say, hey, Jim, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about my compensation today. I'm really eager to see if we can work this out. Okay? Saying it in that way conveys, 1, hey, Jim, I know you. I like you. Hey, 2, I am here because I want to raise. Okay. No beating around the bush, because there's this weird, awkward silence when you come into a room for a specific meeting where both parties kind of know what's going on. Okay. If you're the one asking for the raise, you need to be in the driver's seat, and you position yourself in the driver's seat by introducing the topic, because if you introduce the topic, then they're going to kind of be in the bucket to follow you. It works on your leaders. Okay. It's called managing up. Okay. A lot of VPs that I worked with, and some executives even, I walk in, I set the tone, I set the pace, I set the agenda for the meeting, because I don't want to deal with the hemming and hawing and the oh, hey Brian, how's the weather kind of conversation. Not that, well, I personally hate those conversations, but not that they're bad. It's just it's detracting from the topic at hand. And the more that you can lay the groundwork to jump into the conversation, the less delay, the less awkwardness, and the more likely you are to actually have some productivity in the meeting. Because if you allow it to just kind of circle around, you're also allowing yourself the space in your mind to back out. Everybody has that, right? You got this meeting set, and you think right before the meeting, maybe I don't have to bring this up. Maybe I don't have to talk about it. And then the conversation just kind of goes, and then you come out of the meeting and you're like, man, I really wanted to talk about that, but I didn't. And this definitely helps to prevent that. So walk in with confidence. Start with questions in any negotiation, any conversation. If you have not already done the research to identify what is needed for a raise, etc., this is specifically regarding to some of the groundwork. But even if you've already done all of the groundwork, asking conversations or questions like this to discover how well your boss is doing, right? So, hey, as an employee, hey Brian, how's the team been doing this week? Are we ahead of our goals? Are we behind? That kind of gives you a gauge on mood. It also gives you a gauge on the performance of your group and yourself, because now your boss has the opportunity to talk about concerns that you may not have been aware of going into the conversation that maybe you can solve for, or maybe you don't have to, but if you can solve for, it increases your chances, right? You keep that as a bargaining chip. So if I come back and I say, hey, we're doing fantastic, but we've got 2 people on the team below the national average. Okay. Well, then I'm going to say, hey, let me take time to coach. We'll say Jim, one of the 2, right? Because Jim actually, I think, has some effort. Joe over there is clocked out and he's not going to do anything. So this is the type of discovery you're looking to do. Is there anything that I can put in my pocket as a potential bargaining chip if I don't get what I'm looking for? And you're not going to have those opportunities if you don't ask questions. Show what you can do. This goes back to the one-pager that they mentioned earlier, but also it's that whole, maybe I need to go coach Jim, right? If you can duplicate yourself, this is probably the hardest trait to find and develop in leaders. But if you can duplicate yourself and your efforts, you are exponentially more valuable to your boss, to your company, to wherever it is you are. So that's the first thing that I go to when it says show what you can do is coaching and development. Maybe that's not always available. Okay. Maybe you can clean up processes, right? We talked about business systems analysts. Maybe you identified a workflow in the company that takes, 5 hours, but you've identified a way to cut that work down to 2. Well, if you have that, bam, that's immediately, guess what, boss? I am more valuable than what you're giving me credit for. Focus on the future, not the past. A lot of folks will start. This is a really, really common one. I heard it a lot. I hope I never said it. I might have, no promises, but I heard it a lot. And, well, you signed up to work for X. Sure, I did. But now I know more about the company. I know more about the role. I know more about my value. Whatever it is, you know more now than what you do when you signed up. So anytime they try to focus on the past, you need to pivot and focus on the future. So comments like, hey, I'm interested in growing with this company, or I see myself doing X role in the next 5 years or 3 years. Those types of projections or conversations or focus on the future is going to make it easier for your boss to justify bridging the gap from where you're starting today to where you would like to ultimately go. And it helps them realize or recognize that this singular conversation about a pay raise is a part of the journey. It's not necessarily your end destination. Because if you go into it and the only thing that you're thinking of is, man, it'd be really nice to move up to 55 grand a year or 70 grand a year or whatever it is you're targeting, and that's your end goal, that doesn't really have a big value statement to anybody on the other side of the table. So identifying or showing that you've got a long-term outlook for the position also says, you know what, I can give this guy a raise and I'm not going to be worried that he's going to quit 6 months later. So that's a part of the reason why focusing on the future helps. Think about the other person when you're preparing for negotiation. Think about, we all know what our boss constantly asks us about. Think about what they're going to ask you about, because they're not going to be as creative as you are, most likely. And if you hear once every 3 months that, maybe you could be, a little more personal, right? Ask people how their day is going to be. You can prepare ahead of time and say, hey, boss, for the last 3 weeks, you won't even have to say it, maybe, because the last 3 weeks you come in and you've taken time to greet everybody on the team or whatever it is that they keep harping on you. That's a weird thing. It's feedback that I personally got, was not talking to the rest of the team for a little while. But it is one thing that you can identify and you can address ahead of time, or prepare for ahead of time, right? Another one that came up much later in my career is, Brian, you assume all the time. I was like, that's because I'm frequently right. Very rarely do I find myself in a situation where I have to backpedal or revisit a situation. Also, I'd like to point out, boss, that while I do make assumptions all of the time, I am consistent in verifying the follow-up, as in I will ask exploratory questions to make sure that the client understands that I already have the answer to their question, kind of a thing. So it's even if you're not going to change it in your personality, if you already are able to defend it or whatever, it's good to have that in mind before going into the meeting. And you really should have some sort of rapport with your boss to be able to identify that. If not, before the conversation, say, hey, boss, you got any feedback on my performance for the last month, let's say? And if they've got something, they'll tell you. If not, great, good. At least you've taken the time to think about potential challenges. Try thinking about someone else. This is a tip for a lot of people. Imposter syndrome. It's a thing. Okay. A lot of people don't have a high level of self-awareness or self-confidence. And if that's you, try thinking of yourself as someone else, or thinking that you're doing it for someone else, right? I'm here for my kids. That might give you enough of a bump to increase your confidence enough to have this conversation. I am here as, somebody I respect, my high school mentor. This is how he would treat this situation. Whatever it is that you have to do to think of it from that angle really does help to kind of get over the hurdle of the conversation. So if you're struggling with self-confidence, try thinking about someone else. You're doing it for someone other than yourself, or you're projecting forward that confidence that you see or respect in someone else. The next thing is, try to stay positive. Don't be pushy. Nobody likes a know-it-all. All right. As a know-it-all, I can tell you I've rubbed a lot of people the wrong way throughout my career. And it does take an awareness to understand finding that balance between, I know my worth, but also not, hey, you're screwing everything up and you need to adjust to me. Because really, again, it's the relationship standpoint. You're going to catch a whole lot more flies with honey than vinegar, right? So even though you're right, even though you're justified, doesn't necessarily mean that you need to push it, okay? If you have to force it, it's probably shit. So just don't take that, hey, my way or the highway approach. Put your number out first, or setting the anchor. This is a common negotiating tactic. I have been taught on both sides of the equation. Okay, it really depends on the scenario and makes a difference on who you're negotiating with as to whether or not you should put out that first offer or not. But if you've done your research and you know the cap, then put the cap out first. Okay, if you've not done your research, my guidance would be go back to square one and start over. But if you've not done your research, then you never want to be the person to put out the first offer. So when to make the first number or offer in a negotiation depends on your level of information and expertise. And I would argue that in this situation, you'd better damn well be the expert in it, because again, we're all our own advocates. And while there are people out there that want to help you, at the end of the day, you're the only one who's going to get you further. So make sure you understand the range. And if you've got a firm grasp on the range, even if you're off by a couple of grand, right, go out at the top offer, start there first on the negotiation here, because whereas if you started just like earlier at the halfway point, maybe you go up a little bit from where you are now. Whereas if you start at the top end, maybe, just maybe, you're going to land right there smack dab in the middle, which was your projection or goal in the first place. Ask for more than what you want. That's putting your number out there first. And again, top of range thing. Don't use ranges. Okay? Don't use ranges in any negotiating. Okay, in the stock market, we have limit orders, basically saying, give me this price or better. Take it a step further. Give me this value, this dollar amount, or nothing else. Don't give the range of I'd be happy with $28 to $32 an hour. Guess what your offer is going to be? $28. If it negotiates, maybe you're lucky you get $28.50. Whereas if you come in and you say, hey, I want $32, the counter offer is going to be $30. Already $1.50 ahead in negotiating, just because you used a specific number versus a range. Because in negotiating, every time I hear a range, every time, an experienced negotiator is going to come at you just below that range. You go, oh, I can offer you 55. And then if you say, no, I'm sorry, I'm stuck to my range, then they're going to come back and go, okay, well, I guess I can make it to the 60. And there you have it. You gave yourself the lowest available number in your range, because that's what you started with. So be specific, no ranges. Get it out of your head, no range. Be kind but firm. Honestly, this is words to live by for your life in general. Just be kind to everybody that's involved, but don't budge. Okay, if you know that you're 65,000 and they give you an offer of 58,000, don't budge. Okay, there's one scenario where I would say that this type of concession is okay. If you're in a small or medium size company and they come back to you in good faith and say, look, the best that we can absolutely offer is 58,000. All right, we did what we can, and this is the best raise we can get. You graciously accept. Okay, because remember, this is not an obligation or a contract to continue work. This is only an agreement to start compensating you at this level. So graciously accept that the 58,000, but make sure that you leave the door open to understand that you really do expect to move up. Okay, and in the process of that, you can continue to work forward happily and productively, hopefully, with the company, and then start actively casting your line out elsewhere until you do get that offer of the compensation you're actually worth, and then move on at that point. But if your search or job hunt takes a while because you didn't say, great, 58,000 is amazing, and I'm glad I can get that, right? They can't assume that you're happy with it, which means in the background, as your boss, I'm probably going to keep an eye on that number. That 65,000 is going to stick in my head. And if we have a gangbusters quarter and the CFO comes out and says, hey, we can afford a little bit extra in raises, guess what? You're going to be the first person I come to and I go, hey, I know that you're looking to get to 65. I can offer to take you from 58 to 61 right now. And you're one step closer. It's not likely to all come in a single swoop, because if they're that hardlined about it, there's a reason why they're not pushing that number. But if they do get the wiggle room and the leeway, that offer will come back at a later time. So in this firmness portion, be kind, be gracious, but be clear. make sure that the boss doesn't walk out of the conversation patting himself on the back. Hey, I gave Joe the $58,000. It's more than he was making. He should be happy. No, Joe, I am worth. Joe says, I am worth $65,000. I'm going to go ahead and accept the 58 because this is a raise, and I'm grateful for that. But you need to understand that I have to get my compensation up, and so I'm going to continue to pursue that. And that is a gracious way to have the conversation. Depending on who you're working with, might depend on how much more you need to fluff that statement up. But make sure that it's not misinterpreted as, woohoo, I got 58 grand. Everything's better for me. No, you want to make sure they understand that 65 is your target, and that's where you got to go. Focus on market value. This is a good overall topic. I do this with car negotiations all the time. Tell the car lot, as soon as I drive this car off the lot, it's losing 30% of its value right out of the gate. They become a lot less stickler on price at that point. So tell your boss, hey, other people doing this work in this city are making 70 grand. Just know that. Focus on the market value, because it's less than about you getting more. It's now just understanding the reality of the market, because now your boss knows that, you know, if you quit, he's going to have to go out and hunt, and he's going to have to convince someone else to work for less than what they're worth. So make sure you focus on the market value aspect. It makes it a lot less personal in negotiation, and you're going to appreciate that. Prioritize your requests. If you've got multiple requests in a conversation like this, in terms of compensation, make sure you understand what's most and least important. Okay, I'll go back to car negotiating again. Some people, it's the payment, the monthly payment that's most important. Some people, it's the interest rate that's most important. Other people, it's the actual sticker dollar price that's most important. You got to realize that in a lot of this stuff, when it comes to money, it's kind of a levers and barometer or gauge balancing act, right? I can't push everything up, all volume knobs up at the same time. But maybe I can move 2 or 3 of your requests up, or 1 of your requests up. So pick whichever one's most important to you. Focus on that first, but make sure that they're aware, right? So if you're working at a startup, as an example, and you're looking to get stock options or stock compensation in the company, then that's something that you should prioritize. If you're working for a Fortune 500 company and they've got room to increase your vacation times or buckets, focus on that, right? Know first what the important things are for you in your request for negotiating raises before you go start the process. It's going to make it a lot less muddied. And I say that because I fell for this in early on in my career. More than once, I accepted a bonus instead of a base compensation increase. I learned after 2 or 3 times of doing that not to accept the bonuses anymore, because that was stupid to me. The fact that I was losing so much from the bonus, and I was like, I can't first off guarantee that I'm going to get a bonus, at least in the department or demographic I was in. It wasn't direct sales for most of it, so there was no way for me to guarantee or directly influence my bonus other than just the negotiations that came up with my leaders. So I learned, refocus on my baseline pay. Let's get that up first. And oddly enough, as my baseline pay went up, so did my bonuses. Interesting how that works, because bonuses are based on a percentage of your total compensation. So a double increase for me going for base compensation versus the bonus. So understand what's important, prioritize it. Don't mention personal needs. This is one point on the list that I will detract from just a little bit. Don't make it your priority, right? Don't make it the basis for why you should get a merit increase. But, okay, if you're a single mother, or you have medical expenses, or you've got a kid who's coming up to college age, each of these things are a personal reason to justify a compensation increase. Don't lead with it. Okay, but don't be shy in bringing it up when your boss asks something stupid like, what's this raise going to mean to you, or what's it for, or why do you need it, right? be clear, be honest with yourself. I am not a fan of withholding information. I'm not a fan of not being personable, because you guys know I'm super like focused on professionalism, and I don't chat about the weather. I'm not a touchy-feely kind of person, but I'm still a human. You tell me you're a single mom and you got a kid who needs a car or whatever, I want to help you. You tell me that you just went through a medical procedure and you're trying to catch up on your bills, I want to help you. So I'm telling, this is the one I will defer on, and I will say very vehemently, do not base your request for a raise on these reasons, but I would say that it is okay to go ahead and mention them if they are directly asked. Okay, don't try to find a way to snake it into the conversation if it doesn't come up. So it's like an audit. Don't offer more than what's asked for. But if it does come up, be confident and don't shy away from it. And don't make it seem like this raise is going to change your life, because that gets awkward if the person on the other side of the table can't even come close to delivering what you're asking for. But again, mentioning it's a need. It's a normal need people face. So understand that if it comes up, I'm saying don't shy away from it, even though the advice is contrary to that. Next, ask for advice. Ask for advice from the directors. Ask advice from the VPs, executive suite, anybody who is willing to give you advice. Ask for it. If you've got a good rapport with your immediate boss, ask them, hey, boss, I'm going to start asking for a raise here soon. Any pointers, any tips? Because your boss is going to be aware of what the process is to justify a raise or a merit increase. So if you do that in advance, it's going to make the whole process for you easier. Less guesswork. That's what that's all about. Use email when appropriate. Here's the thing. Don't negotiate numbers, okay, over email. But do say hey in the title, subject line of the email. Hey, boss, this is about Brian's merit increase. When can we meet? That's okay. Like it keeps it in writing. It keeps it documented. And it's also something that you can refer back to later for HR or your director and say, hey, I've been talking to my boss for 6 months about a compensation or merit increase. It's end of year reviews. And suddenly he has all of this feedback or justification on why I can't get a raise this year. His fault for not telling me that I need to do XYZ project, or giving me this opportunity to increase my performance, or whatever. It is an important tactic in corporate America to have as much stuff in email as possible, but also understand that you don't want to put actual numbers in an email, because then they can come back to you and say, we can't pay $75,000 for this role, so we've decided to let you go. Not saying that that's legal, because it's not, but it is something that could come up and happen. So don't put exacts in there. And then also, if you lowball yourself and $75,000, and they're like, ha, we pay $90,000 for this role, but you said $75,000 and it's in writing. So yeah, that's why you avoid putting specifics in writing. But do have the conversation in the email as appropriate, because again, that documentation existing makes it easier to revisit the conversation later. So you have your one-on-one with your boss, nothing's happened for a month and a half, and then you decide, okay, so I'm going to action this item, and you come back a month and a half later, so you've now got 3 months behind you, and you say, hey boss, remember that email 3 months ago, that conversation we had 3 months ago? What's the status? And that kind of lights a fire under people. So that's an appropriate way to use email. Don't dismiss it. Don't forget to listen, and don't fear the no. Both of these things are important, okay? Your boss is always going to have feedback for you, because that's the first thing that they tell bosses is their job. Their job is to tell you how you're doing your job. So be ready for the feedback. Understand that it may come out of left field, but you do need to listen and action as appropriate. Don't be afraid of the no. Okay, that's true for anything, right? You didn't get the job because you were afraid of no's. You got the job because you put yourself out there. So you're gonna get the raise because you put yourself out there. You're gonna get the discount on your car for negotiating because you put yourself out there. So don't fear the no. You can't have it if you don't ask. So the rule is ask. Getting the answer, use stalling to your advantage. Okay, this works really well in a lot of negotiations. I use this in car negotiating a lot. As soon as the offer is presented, if it's not exactly what you asked for, don't jump to a response. Don't say that's great. Don't say okay. Stall. Okay, let me consider this. I'll think about it. So is this the best that you guys have to offer? Right? Questions like that, stall tactics, delaying, you don't have to fill the silence. Use silence as a tool, right? So if I ask you guys, hey, show of emotes, how many of you guys have successfully asked for a raise in the past? And then I just continue to talk, well, you're not going to get a chance to respond. Same thing happens in negotiations. That first offer that comes out, even though this is an interaction, you got to remember they are being coached and taught to negotiate, just like I'm trying to do for you. So they're going to be told, go in and start with this offer, but be willing to move up to this amount, or have this back pocket offer ready just in case that's not enough for them. So all of these things, you're on the opposite side of the table with another person who's like you, gotten coaching and is coming into this as a negotiation. So don't fear the silence. Use it to your advantage. It works. My wife does this on project calls all the time. She'll just stare. Just look straight at the camera or the person she's talking to. Not say a word. And you have no clue what's going on in her head. Half the time she's thinking about some other work project or just completely distracted. But she does it with intention and on purpose because that silence brings awkwardness, which makes people try to fill in the space, which means that they're going to improve their offer because they immediately assume you're upset. So even if you're ecstatic about the offer, let's say you were asking for 65 and they came in at 62, still be silent. Let them fill in that space because they might go, oh shoot, 62, he's sitting there quiet. He's got to be pissed. Why aren't they happy? Why won't they accept this? Okay, I'm going to immediately come in with my back pocket offer. So, $62,000 and I'm giving you an extra week of vacation every year. Oh, really? Thanks. That sounds good. Whereas if you immediately jump the gun and accept, well, you have no clue what else is there in the works. So anytime it doesn't come to the level that you expected it to, even if it's good, be silent. See if you get a little bit more out of it. Number 33, and we're getting pretty close here, is ask questions, okay? If you don't get it, or even if you do, asking questions helps, right? So let's say you get that offer and the boss comes back and says, bam, I got you the $65,000 this year because you're a rock star and you deserve it. Great, boss. What can I do to better set myself up for next year? Right? Just that question alone helps to your boss to identify or understand you've got some drive, you've got some motive. So even if it's positive, asking questions has value at a later date. So there you go. Don't be afraid to counter. So let's say they come in, you use that silent 62 plus a week. Hey, boss, I really like and I really appreciate that week. Is there any way you can get me to 65 plus the extra week of vacation? Yeah, doesn't hurt to ask. All right. Counter, because again, you started the process. Why are you going to stop as soon as it starts to move? If you can keep moving the ball, if you can kick it down just a little bit further, it's going to pan out better for you. So even if you do get close, don't be afraid of the counter because there's nothing telling you, unless they say outright, we don't have the money, that you can't get what you're looking for. So keep pressing. Just don't get annoying about it, right? Don't make them say no to the same thing 3 times. Don't make threats Okay, that's a good way to make an enemy real quick, right? Do this or else. There's the door, bitch. That kind of attitude is a quick way to lose friends and make enemies. So don't threaten about it, right? If you do have the back pocket offer from another firm, okay, don't make it as a threat. Don't say match, JP Morgan's salary or I walk. Just don't do that. It's a dick move. People don't like those kind of people. Instead, hey, JP Morgan offered me this. I really like the team. I like you, boss. Whatever it is you like about the company. Focus on that. Focus on the positives, and it's going to go a lot smoother. Consider other options, okay? If your boss, the HR group, completely unable to budge, look for other things that can give you a boost, okay? At least in the interim. Maybe working from home a couple of days a week. I know a lot of people just kind of got that gifted to them because of COVID. But there's other things other than just physical dollar compensation. If they give you more time off, maybe it gives you the opportunity to pursue that passion project. It unlocks for you 4 to 12 hours a week, something like that you can dedicate to yourself and your own development, and maybe raising your skill set so that you can better position yourself for a raise. That's why other options are important and shouldn't be immediately dismissed, because again, compensation at a company is more than just the dollars, so understand that. And then keep negotiating. If it seems like a lot, it is. That's what negotiating is. So understand that this is not easy for most people, and just the fact that you're willing to do it sets you apart. You've already outpaced 99% of the population by being willing to have the conversation in the first place. Keep at it, because eventually it will pan out for you. And it's a skill, it's a muscle that you develop over time. So just like maybe you started work and you're like, man, I'm never gonna figure out Excel. Well, the more time you spend in it, the better you get at it. So allow this to also be a learning opportunity for you as well. It's not going to be perfect out of the gate, and because of that, understand that your first negotiation might fail miserably, but the more you do it, the easier it's going to be, and the more success you're going to find later down the road. So with that kind of ends the tips. My insights, I hope, were helpful along the way. Again, the important aspects I think to remember is you're dealing with people. Okay, so be empathetic. Understand that this is uncomfortable potentially for your boss. It wasn't for me, because any opportunity I had to talk to people about getting paid more by the company, I got excited about. I don't know why. I was weird about that. But on my team, the first 6 months, I had 9 promotions, and 7 of those people stayed on the team. 2 of them went to other positions and ended up getting paid exponentially more. And as far as I'm concerned, as a leader, that's a feather in my cap. All right. All of these people were moving on from an entry-level position or increasing their compensation because I was not afraid of those conversations. And remember, it's a two-way street. Okay, so if your boss has feedback and says, I need you to do X in order for me to justify this raise, be willing to consider it. Okay, understand that it's necessary. A couple of career development tips, not specific to negotiations, that I think are important to realize. You have roles that are hourly. You have roles that are salaried. You have roles that are individual contributors. You have roles that are specialized. And you have roles that are leadership in multiple different facets or ranges or angles. And then you've got purely sales-driven roles or production roles like a skill or a trade or something. Okay? Understand the broader picture of what you're doing in your career. Okay? Maybe you want to continue to be an individual contributor. Okay, how can you be better at it? How can you get paid more for it? Not every conversation needs to be, hey, boss, I want to be a boss just like you and move up the corporate ladder. That is not everybody's paths. Okay, not everybody needs to go down that. So if you're looking at yourself and you say, I only want to be an individual contributor, next question is, how do I specialize now? Okay, because a specialist is going to be making 6 figures plus a year. I mean, $240,000 a year in some highly specialized roles is something that a major corporation is not going to bat an eye at. If you've got like some sort of a architect background for network support, and you know you've got XYZ certification and you've been at it for 20 years, you've earned your right to demand a higher compensation. And walking in to a role and saying, give me 180K is potentially justifiable. But make sure that you understand how to increase your value to fit that or equal that, because it is a process, okay? And it could be as simple early on, like in the business systems analyst role. Maybe you get start your PMP process. Right? Just identifying, hey, I'm willing to go out and get my project management certification. That sets you apart. Okay, getting a technical certification, maybe in database administration or Python programming or some other SQL cert is a way to stand out as a BSA. Okay, understand that you can do more. And you should do more to be able to fix or solve the company's problems, and the company's not always aware of it. Okay, sometimes you're dealing with a situation where you jumped on a team that's been doing it the same way for the last 12 years, and they don't see that there's a problem entering the same information on 8 different forms. Well, guess what? I can automate that, boss. Let me show you this tool that's going to cut the workload or necessity of this entire department in half. These types of things, these types of solutions are going to set you apart. Even if, okay, this special project doesn't immediately result in you getting a compensation increase, it's going to be remembered. And it's also a star story that you can put on your resume for an interview later down the road. Because nothing excited me more as a hiring manager or a business owner than interviewing someone who took initiative. And I was always willing to offer a little bit more or just extend an offer to that person, like without hesitation, because I know that they're going to find a way to add value later, and I'm not going to have to babysit them to get it done. So that's it. That's kind of the holistic picture, my 2 cents on career development and negotiating. I didn't get into all of the different facets. I focused on the individual contributor aspect because I understand that's going to be the majority of my folks. But if you're specialized as a leader or you're climbing the corporate ladder and you've got more questions for coaching, don't hesitate to reach out to us in the community. Come join us on Twitch. What's up, YouTube? Good to see you. Or join us in the Discord. With that being said, my name is Brian LeBlanc. This platform is Where Rebels Are. I'm glad you guys joined me for this conversation. If you've got questions, the Discord and Twitch are going to be a lot faster to answer. But if you post them here on YouTube as well, I will go ahead and do my best to stay on top of it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and all of that jazz. And I will see you on the next video.